Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. Today, Bryce Simon is here with me, and we're going to dive deep into the Cleveland Cavaliers and their 29-4 start to the NBA season, as well as give our all-star picks so far for this season. But first, let's hit the music.
They do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Way downtown.
Bang! Bang! What's this gonna be? Wow! Are you kidding me?
Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. But if you watch the tape, what you will see completely orchestrated this game. Bryce, what's going on, buddy?
What's up, Sam? Shout out to B Bobbler for the bobblehead. Sam, I'm getting old. We had New Year's Eve in the States a couple nights ago, and I was asleep by 10:30. I did not even come close to midnight. I didn't want to come close to midnight. I wanted nothing to do with it. I had work to do on New Year's Day. I had stuff I wanted to get done, and I knew I wouldn't enjoy doing that work if I didn't get to sleep early.
So for people who don't know, I haven't really been drinking for the last 2.5 months, something like that. And again, on New Year's, didn't have anything to drink, but we went out to a friend, Evan listens to the show. Shout out to Evan Morris, unbelievable dude, and his wife, Allie, who, awesome human beings, awesome people. We went over to their house for New Year's, and we didn't get home until 2:00. I didn't get to sleep until, I don't know, 3:30, because we dropped off Laura's cousin and everything like that afterward and everything. So I felt like, you know what, I'm going to wake up fine. I didn't have anything to drink tonight. I was the driver. I'm going to be good. Man, my body is so conditioned to waking up at, 7 a.m. or whatever. I woke up at 7 for an hour and then went back to sleep. And then I was up again at 10:30 or something like that. I've never started my day at 10:30 for the last 2 years or so, really, probably. I was really hurting the next day. And then this morning I was telling you, Laura's sister is in town, and we went to this crazy buffet dinner last night in the city. Shout out to the Langham Hotel here in Melbourne. And it was amazing. It was so good. The food was unbelievable. Look, I was overserved. And by overserved, I mean, I went to the buffet line too many times. And my body is in some significant pain this morning. Again, have not been drinking, but unfortunately, the food intake was a bit aggressive last night. So it's a real factor, man. We are getting older. This is how we know.
I've learned that sleep, hydration, and not eating too much food, man. Whenever I was younger, I would just eat whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted. Could be as late at night, junk food, whatever. And now that is not the case. Have to be careful there. But if I can get some water and a good night's sleep, I'm usually pretty productive the next day. But if I get dehydrated, if I don't get enough sleep, migraine comes on or something like that. I don't like it. It's people say it all the time, such a cliche, but it sucks getting old. And that is very true as I enter my late 30s.
Well, that, and the other thing is too, so I'm still 34 or whatever, but the ADHD is a factor for me, to where I absolutely, if I don't start the day with protein today, I'll be fine, because I think my body is still intaking all of the food from last night. But if I don't start the day with a protein shake or eggs or something, I have no chance to focus that day. I can take as many, ADHD pills as I want to take. It's just not going to happen. Right. So it's real. We got to get to the point where we've gotten to the point now, I guess, where we got to take care of ourselves. That's the reality. Speaking of taking care of himself, we really hope that Jaden Ivey is able to take care of himself over the next, it seems, month and a half, 2 months, maybe even the full year at this point. But Jaden Ivey last night suffered a broken fibula in his left leg. That is what Shams Charania is calling it over at ESPN. If you saw the play, I mean, it looked pretty gross at the time. Cole Anthony kind of dove for a loose ball, and he undercut Jaden a little bit. It was not a dirty play.
No.
Like, I saw some of that last night, and like, please do not do that. Cole Anthony you could literally see it on the sidelines. Like, he felt terrible about it, and it was rough.
Real quick sidebar. We can't complain about players not playing hard and then complain about a guy diving for a loose ball. So like, we can't have it both ways. As somebody who played the game at a fairly high level, I've never watched one of those and most of those and thought there was something egregious. And that one specifically, I didn't even rewind it to see if I thought Cole did something egregious. There was never a thought in my mind that that was like a dirty play of any capacity.
Truly zero intent. It felt like to me, like absolutely zero intent. So please, people do not say that. But Jaden Ivey now has a broken left fibula. Honestly, I mean, he goes out on like a stretcher and everything. I'm very curious about like how that came about a little bit. Maybe he was just like a little bit freaked out and everything, and they didn't want to move him. Okay. He is going to be reevaluated in a month. That's what you've told me here. That's what the release said.
Yep.
Explain to me where your head is at on this.
Yeah. So, I mean, when we talked about it this morning on the Pistons pod, we thought maybe this was going to be longer. And my biggest thing was, so to me, this is the best case scenario based on what it could have been, based on what happened,
what it looked like,
what people thought it may be, some of the reports. You know, I don't call them Twitter doctors in a negative connotation. I'm talking about people like really, I think that our doctors that we're trying to evaluate just from video, we're talking about like ankle stuff and dislocations and potentially knee and all of that. Yeah. I will admit my first reaction was I showed it to Randy. I talked to Randy. I was like, I think he just broke his leg, just quote unquote broke his leg. So I think this is the best news that Pistons fans and Jaden Ivey could have expected. I don't know if we want to get into like how the Pistons actually handled this. What I'm interested in is like, are they in a position? Yeah. If you want that, there was 60 minutes of it on the Pistons Pulse over on the Detroit Free Press YouTube channel. Go listen over there. But is depending on what situation they're in, does he return and play? And I think even more than that, where I went to secondary, Sam, beyond just like, I hope J.I. is okay and all of that, was he is extension eligible this offseason. And this was a big year of data for the Pistons, for Jaden Ivey in regards to that contract. I equated it on a different scale to what just happened, unfortunately, to Drew Smith of the Miami Heat, where Drew Smith, by all accounts, was about to get a standard contract with the Heat and then popped his Achilles, and hopefully a speedy recovery to him as well. Not quite the same situation, but I just wonder what this could do, because I want to see guys get paid. I want to see them get money, and beyond just missing out his third year in the NBA, this was a huge year in terms of data and information for the Pistons, evaluating him with Cade, the rest of the roster, and what that might mean for a contract.
Well, and look, like, again, I agree with you. This is the best case scenario for what it could have been for Jaden. Like, no ligament damage, no structural damage outside of the broken leg. Broken legs are bad. Don't get me wrong. This entire situation sucks.
Yes.
But in terms of paying him, I would hope that the Pistons have seen enough this year to give him real money if he wants real money, right? Like, it's not as much as it would have been. We can just be upfront about that, because here's the other thing about Jaden, and maybe this is where we can talk about this too. I've really liked Jaden this year. I think Jaden's been outstanding. He missed those couple of games back in like mid-December or whatever, but since he's come back, he was averaging 19, 4, and 3, shooting 60, 60, and 75. So, like, look, unsustainable 3-point shooting is what it is during those 5 games, during that 5-game stretch. But overall, he's been really good this year. He's averaging 18 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, shooting 46, 41, 73 from the field. Has a true shooting percentage that is about league average for the first time after 2 years of being 8 and 9% below league average. Previously in his first 2 seasons where he played for multiple coaching staffs really that didn't really understand how to utilize him with Cade Cunningham. I still think there is a lot of room for improvement. I really like the fact that he is comfortable taking threes. I really like the fact that he is playing as aggressively as he is. I also think that there is some room for improvement in terms of like his gathers going toward the rim, being able, like Jaden Ivey is the kind of athlete who should live at the foul line. And right now he's averaging like 4 free throws per game, which is the same as last year, and it hasn't really happened. But I have really liked what I've seen from Jaden this year. I think it's been the kind of growth that we hoped to see from him, also playing for a better team in Detroit that is 15 and 18 right now, looks very solid. I think is a real contender to make the play-in tournament. The fact that he's been able to help them over the 30 games out of 33 that he's played this year says a lot to me that I wouldn't really have a problem investing $25 million a year in Jaden Ivey at this point if he's willing to do that. But if you're Jaden, are you thinking that you are worth more than that and you want to take the shot going into next season that you could like really, really get paid? I don't know that I have a real opinion on that. It's really up to his comfort level in terms of the kind of risk that he's willing to take going into next season.
So I guess that's where I was saying where I wonder if it ends up costing him some money, because over his last 5 games specifically, he's really shot the ball extremely well from 3. You mentioned that. And on the season, if he shoots over 40% from 3 on the entire season, Sam, like, yes, we have a 30-game sample. That's significant, but it's not 75 games. And his catch and shoot numbers are even better. I actually looked him up before the game yesterday. He shot ridiculous, actually, till he got hurt last night. And he was like 45% on catch and shoot this year. He's been really good in regards to that. I just think a season-long 75-game sample of Jaden Ivey shooting 40% from 3 or even 38% from 3 changes what he can probably demand from the Pistons, as opposed to now where it's like, yeah, it was really good, but it's a 30-game sample. The nice thing about this injury, in my opinion, and I'm not a doctor, I don't know 100%, is I don't think the injury specifically costs him money in terms of like, oh, we're worried about what he's going to be coming out of this. Like maybe an ACL would, or like an Achilles may worry teams or something like that. Or I don't know, like a dislocated ankle sounds way worse to me than a broken leg. And I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying but I'm just saying, I don't think the Pistons would equate like, oh, this is going to come into play long-term for him being good and what we thought. So I think he'll be fine in regards to that. I just think he could have made money showing this ability to continue to knock down shots, specifically from the 3-point line.
Yeah. So just kind of going through history, right? A lot of the times when you break your fibula, you also break the tibia, which is the bigger bone. The fibula is like the kind of smaller bone in your leg. The tibia is the bigger one in your lower leg. That's the big one. Like where if you break that one, it's like a real issue. But even then, guys mostly still come back from that. Like Paul George is the best example of that, where he broke both his tibia and fibula and ended up returning basically fine, right? So I haven't been able to find in my research like too many examples of somebody only breaking a fibula and figuring out what that means.
Yeah.
So I'm not entirely sure how to go about that situation and what that means for Jaden Ivey's return. I would assume it's probably pretty positive in terms of what it means long term, but I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to sit here and necessarily pretend.
Yeah, no, and that's what, like, again, I'm saying based off kind of how I would understand things, maybe somebody can prove me wrong in terms of, hey, actually breaking this is worse than dislocating your ankle or something like that. I don't know, to be 100% honest. But again, it does seem like it was the best result out of what we saw. It was very emotional actually during the game. I mean, the Pistons players were very emotional. I assume it looked really, really bad. And they never showed, they kept it covered with the towel. The video never showed it. So I assume it looked really, really bad. I also think it probably speaks a little bit to what Jaden Ivey means to his teammates and his coach as they responded that way. But yeah, I hope for a speedy recovery for him, because he was starting to figure a lot of those things out. There's lots of areas of growth and improvement, like you said. But yeah, I think overall, compared to 12 out, well, almost 24 hours now, it's as good as news as what I was hoping for JI.
I think that it is probably the best that could have been after the unfortunate circumstance of the injury. I mean, look, we can talk about the Pistons real quick, just in terms of like what they're going to do, right? And what this means. They do need a secondary ball handler now, like pretty drastically. That is a serious factor for them. They need to go out and find a body, in all honesty. You can't put more on Cade's plate. There's enough on that plate already. I wouldn't want to put more on it. I would guess that they probably start one of Malik Beasley or Asar Thompson. Do you have a strong opinion on that?
I just want Malik to continue to come off the bench so he has a chance to win Sixth Man of the Year. I actually threw out this idea, and I still haven't workshopped it completely. We've seen coaches not like to change rotations and roles. And I think the easiest way to do that, while also getting data on a former first-round pick, is actually inserting Marcus Sasser into the starting lineup and leaving everybody else in the same spot and saying, Marcus, go play off the ball and knock down catch and shoot shots. Be the point of attack defender against some matchups. This isn't going to go very well. And that's where you have to start Asar. I threw it out. I don't know that I love it. My guess is that it is Asar. I wouldn't hate JB experimenting with that. I'm also in a place of, I'm okay if they continue to experiment with things a little bit as well, as long as it doesn't turn into like a 10-game losing streak or something like that. Like they can't like completely tank this 15-8 record away. But you did, Trajan didn't, but you did invest a first-round pick in Marcus Sasser. I think his best chance at being successful, Sam, is playing off a jumbo initiator like Cade Cunningham.
Look, I think Marcus Sasser's good. So like, I'm in favor of that. I'm not in favor of him starting. I would start one of Malik or Asar, in all honesty. Sure. But I'm in favor of Marcus Sasser playing 15, 20 minutes a night and letting this rock. Like, I think he is very capable of that. And he would be totally fine doing that. Like, I think he's been pretty efficient when he's played this year, right? Like, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but
the shooting has been down a little bit, but also his minutes have been less consistent this year. No, actually his 3-point percentage. No, you're right. The percentages are good. So, 40% from 3 on 2 attempts. So it's really just the minutes are down to 13. So,
yeah. So I think that's what I would do if I was them. The other thing that like kind of hangs over all of this is that the Pistons have all of this cap space, right? Yeah, they have all of the cap space in the world. I would assume that the way that they're going to go about doing this and utilizing this cap space is taking on money in order to get assets. And you could realistically just take on a deal that maybe has 2 years left for a guard or something like that somebody just doesn't want. And then that guy can come in and maybe play if you want to do something like that and facilitate like a 3-team deal for another team by taking on the money that allows them to actually make the trade, right? Like if the, as an example that's not going to happen because it already happened. If the Nets didn't want to take on D'Angelo Russell's money, right, they could have forwarded Russell over to the Pistons and said, hey, we'll give you X assets to just take this on because we don't want the money when we send Dorian to the Lakers. And then, we'll do touching, trade touch rules and everything like that to make it set. But that's just an example of something that they could do in order to make this work. And if they keep it pretty tight compared to them being in the play-in or not, I kind of think that, they should do something like that.
That's what I wondered as well. Just because I wanted to look with Sasser. He did start off the year, first 10 games of the year was shooting 25% from three. And then over his last 12, he's up at 47. So really kind of found his groove while being in a weird rotation and spot as well. Yeah, that's what I brought up today, that instead of using that cap space only to facilitate the third team or whatever, that now you kind of go out a little bit differently with a different motivation in terms of, hey, we need to add it's up this year. You're right, KDC. I was wrong early on. It was not good, but he has definitely found the stroke over the last half of his game. So I was a little off on that, but I think adding a secondary creator in terms of that would be good. So I would not be surprised. I'm kind of interested, though. Again, my appetite is different for this Pistons team. Like, seeing them win 15 games already changes a lot, because we only watched them win 14 last year. But I'm still in, like, I want to see what some of these guys are capable of. I'm a little bit more okay and comfortable experimenting and getting data points. I don't want them to, and they definitely shouldn't be trading assets to fix this either.
No, and they shouldn't have to either.
Correct.
Is the thing.
Yeah.
Like there should be a move where they're able to achieve both goals out there, given that they really hold the thing that I can't keep emphasizing enough to people is, like, given the way that the trade rules have made things more difficult to consummate trades, the Pistons hold a lot of really positive cards on their table to be able to facilitate moves across the league right now. It is going to put them in a real prime position in order to get assets, and also they could use that to fill this gap right now. And the final question I do want to ask here is just from Charles M. And you're a good person to answer this. Like, do you think it's better for them to push for the play-in, let's say, or try to get some of the younger players more experience now?
Real quick on what you were just saying, that was the Paul Reed move, put them above the teams that still had the non-taxpayer MLE in terms of the amount of salary cap space they had there in play for things that those teams can't get to with that non-tax MLE. Again, I'm more patient here, Sam. Like, I want them to try to win games, but not at the expense of not playing Asar Thompson, or, like, my thing is, again, you have to know what Jalen Duren is by the end of this season. And some of us may already think we know one way or the other. Go ahead.
Probably the most important thing, I would argue.
I said the most important things for this season, because you already paid Cade. So doesn't really matter at the end of the day with that. I said you have to know what JI is and what JD is. You have to get as much data on those two guys as possible. I thought those were the most two important things. Now, the argument is, you can find out a lot about guys when they're play in games, right? Like, the most substantial game this team has played in 4 years was that Bucks game that decided who went to the in-season tournament. And we found out they weren't ready in that game because they kind of got worked over by the Bucks. So I do think you would learn a lot from a couple play-in games, a series, if they were able to make it. I would not go all out on, like, oh, we're not going to give Ron Holland any minutes. We're not going to give Asar any minutes. We're going to send Jalen Duren to the bench and try to, like, get guys over them. But I think if you need to make a move like a veteran point guard to help make things the way we've seen thus far, then you absolutely should do that.
And just in terms of the way that the play-in picture looks here for the Pistons, the Wizards and Hornets, I think we can feel pretty confident, are not in this picture, right? They are 8 games plus behind where the Pistons are, and they're just, like, worse teams than the Pistons, frankly. The Raptors are currently 7.5 games behind the Pistons. That's a big gap to fill already this year.
Yeah. That
team with Emmanuel Quickley, given the way he played in his return game, we might have to talk about that later this weekend. Like, I'm intrigued by what they could do, but that's a lot of games to already have to come back from. The Nets will continue to fall, so that's 3 teams that are out. The Bulls really don't want to make the play-in because they have to give up their draft pick if they are outside of the top 10. If I'm the Bulls, like, I'm really trying to sell some dudes and make sure that I end up inside of the top 10 of this draft in order to not give up my pick. So really, I think the Pistons are kind of vying for, 11 spots, 10 teams for 11 spots here. And there's a real shot that they could get there. And this includes the Sixers, who are currently a game behind the Pistons and will continue to rise. Like that's just going to be a factor for them. So yeah, I'd keep going for it. If I'm the Pistons, I would want to get real games, competitive games into this team. Like you said, Bryce.
Yeah, it would be interesting.
Okay. Before we move on to the Cleveland Cavaliers, let's shout out the good folks over at Prizepicks. Prizepicks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. Prizepicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. We love Prizepicks here at Game Theory because of how easy they make it to get real money sports action. If you think that someone like Carson Wentz, Bryce's guy this week for the Kansas City Chiefs, is going to go over his yardage total, or if you think he's going to go over his interceptions total, because that tends to be a more normal goal with Carson Wentz, unfortunately, you can make that pick and more in 60 seconds or less and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long over on Prizepicks. Download the app today. Use the code Game Theory to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app today and use the code Game Theory to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prizepicks, run your game. Okay, so Bryce had to step away momentarily. And yeah, Ewan Ross brings up that he's disappointed Bryce wasn't on camera for that Carson Wentz slander. Yeah, I'm a little bit too. I should have let him be there for that. Is Jeremiah Smith eligible to play small forward for the Cavs? He should be. As you can see, I am here. I am in my Ohio State. Beautiful, beautiful hoodie. Shout out good folks over at Home Field. Got the Ohio State hat on. People who don't know, I went to Ohio State. So we are thrilled with the results yesterday against Oregon. It was a fantastic game.
What slander are you talking? I see in the comments that you.
I said Carson Wentz is probably going to throw a couple of interceptions this weekend.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I don't know who he's going to be able to throw the ball to, so that might actually happen.
Yeah, need Jeremiah Smith, baby.
Yes.
Jeremiah Smith that dude is like ready to be like the next like Andre Johnson. I actually think like did you watch any of the Ohio State Oregon game yesterday?
So I went on a walk, which was late because the game before had gone to overtime. And so when I got back, I had planned on watching and it was already like 28-0. So I was like, well, I guess I will do something else.
Hell yeah, it was. Jeremiah Smith had like 160 yards in the first half. He just completely dominated.
Is he the one that tweeted or said, like, if they want to play man, we're going to take some shots or something like that? I think he had.
I don't know about that, but okay. Yeah, it was disgusting. It was the guy he is the best receiver that they've had as a freshman that I've ever seen. And they've had like unbelievable receivers over the last decade. Like he is better than Marvin Harrison. Jackson Smith and Jigbo was like pretty close in all honesty. I think Smith is better than him even. Like it is sick how good Jeremiah Smith is. The crazy thing is like they have Emeka Ibuka who's going to be like, a top 50 pick this year, and Carnell Tate, who is definitely going to play in the NBA at some point, or the NFL. I'm sorry. Yeah, their receiving core is just so gross. It's unbelievable. Okay, next up, I want to talk about the Cleveland Cavaliers transitioning from one Ohio powerhouse to another. The Cleveland Cavaliers this season are 29-4. They are in the middle of what should be like one of their toughest road trips of the season, playing Denver, Golden State, LA, and the Mavericks back to back to back to back. They beat Denver by 14. They beat the Warriors by 18. And they beat the Lakers by 12. They still have Dallas. That'll be tomorrow. I feel like this little road trip here is kind of the one that has really clued people into how good this team is. And honestly, even in my mind a little bit, I've understood how good they are for a minute. We talked a lot about the Cavs this year and how much we really respect them and think they've been unbelievable this season. But man, like going on this road trip, doing what they've done, even though the Warriors are scuffling right now, the Lakers had looked pretty good recently. And then on top of it, Denver had looked like, like an up and down team at the end of the day, but to just sweep these 3 road games, then you have Dallas here coming up, without Luka, without, Najee, who's still suspended. I think PJ might also still be out. Like I'm blown away with what Cleveland has done. I am so blown away with how impressive they have been in just taking care of business. We're going to talk about if we think they are real contenders so far and what we think to the extent they are real contenders. And maybe we'll do like a quick little contender ranking. But more than that, like, I just think that this team is so remarkably impressive for how they've gone about taking care of business. What has impressed you most about Cleveland to this point?
Yeah, so I text you a couple weeks ago. I was like, you know what we should do? We should revisit our preseason, predictions and stuff like that. And I was looking through mine. I was like, oh, that one wasn't bad. That one, oh, I said the Cavs were going to have to make a trade by the deadline. That was really stupid and really wrong as it looks now, because these guys have figured it out. I mean, the front court, Mobley is shooting well from 3, even though the volume isn't crazy. But I think the backcourt, and you asked me this question, like you said, we've talked about him before, what I thought was the most impressive, the biggest difference for them offensively. I think it's the way that Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell play off of each other. I think it's Donovan Mitchell, who's having an incredible season, is still willing to be unselfish and let Darius do his thing at times. I think it's the way Darius relocates and moves off the ball. I think it's the way Donovan relocates and moves off the ball. I think it's what Donovan has locked in defensively this year and the effort he's giving on that end. And then whether it's coaching, roster construction, whatever, I continue to watch this team and more than any other team go, these guys know their roles and they embrace their roles. They are willing to do what they are asked to do. We've sat here and raved about Ty Jerome off the bench. We've talked about Sam Merrill. You know who else is really good off the bench for them? Karis freaking LeVert is pretty darn good for them off the bench as well. I think they do interesting things coaching wise, offensively. They play a lot of zone. I was watching the Warriors game the other night and it was like, okay, they went zone. And then all of a sudden I'm like, they're full denying Steph Curry. I think they're like in a box and one type of thing here against the Warriors. Like they do some interesting things defensively as well. I find myself really enjoying watching them play because they have the stars, but also all of their role players move without the ball. They move the ball well, all of that stuff. I enjoy this team and they're really, really good.
So the thing that always stands out most to me with them right now is just the way that their offense has actually changed from last season. Last year, this Cavs offense was just nowhere near as powerful as it is right now. Do you know that they have the number 1 offense in the league right now?
I did actually know, but only because I watched, that recent game against the Warriors and I looked it up. It's crazy.
They were 18th last season in offense. They have increased their offensive rating by 6 points per 100 possessions. And to me, the big reason why, and there are a few reasons why, but I think that the most important reason why maybe is that they've increased their pace. And it doesn't always feel like they've increased their pace in transition. It feels like to me that they have started to run more consistent, just like quick hitter plays early on in sets. Like Garland will bring the ball down the court. Jared Allen will set a screen and then he'll go set a flare for Donovan Mitchell, and Mitchell will get open real quick and he'll either shoot a 3 or drive off of it. Or, Garland to Allen, we're just going to get downhill real quick. We're going to set just like a really quick, maybe double drag in transition and find Jared Allen. Like nothing complicated. They're not, reinventing the wheel offensively, but they're finding different ways to be able to attack teams using quick hitting actions. Last season, they were 22nd in pace per game. This year, they are 6th. And it feels like to me, it's not like always coming in the flow of like transition basketball. It feels more like it's early offense, early half court offense, as opposed to, okay, we got to go run this like tried and true, we're going to break down a defense, with off ball movement or anything like that. Then we're going to like end up in just a situation where Donovan is isolating or something like that. It really feels like to me that they are just doing the right things, getting into their offense earlier while the defense is still rotating and scrambling and trying to pick up in transition, and taking advantage of that a little bit better.
They have real flow. Like offensively, they have real flow, and all of these guys, like I said, that's what I love, is it's not just the unselfishness of Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland, but you have guys like Dean Wade, who is either going to catch and shoot it or he's going to move it. Ty Jerome, Sam Merrill, like all of these guys, Niang, they're going to catch the ball and they're either going to score it if they're open, or they're going to move it. They're going to move off the ball. The spacing is pretty good as a team that is 6th in 3-point attempt rate and 1st in 3-point percentage. I mean, all of these guys are shooting the ball extremely well right now. And as somebody mentioned in the comments, Max Strus is now just getting integrated back into it as well. So that adds another guy to all of this. I think like even Jarrett Allen's skill level as a big sometimes is underappreciated. He's really good 3 to 10 feet with finishing those shots. I think you can trust him to short roll pass, all of that. So I just like the way their offense flows. And I can't say it any differently other than these guys know their roles and they have accepted them. And that's why it continues to look so good. And again, I like the creativity defensively in that one game. I feel like they played obviously man, 2-3 zone, a 3-2 zone, and some box and 1-ish type of defense against the Warriors. And I just love coaches in the NBA that are willing to experiment and try different things on the defensive end.
Yeah. And by the way, like, being 29-4, they've played a lot of garbage time minutes, unsurprisingly as well. Even with cleaning the glasses numbers, if you filter out the garbage time minutes, they are still first in offense. They have a 123.2 offensive rating and a 110 defensive rating. They are just kicking the shit out of everybody. Over the last 2 weeks, their point differential is plus 20. Like they are just beating the brakes off of everybody right now. And we can talk about Kenny Atkinson. I feel like I kind of just did for a second, without mentioning that Kenny's the one. The big change here is the coaching change from JB Bickerstaff, who's done a great job in Detroit, to Kenny Atkinson. Like I said last week with Mike Brown, right? Or I guess earlier this week. Mike Brown did a really good job with Sacramento. I think JB Bickerstaff did a really good job with Cleveland. Sometimes it just requires a bit of a different mind. It just requires a bit of a change, a bit of a voice change, a bit of a scheme change. It can be like the Cavs are experiencing right now in order to get the most out of a team. It doesn't mean that JB was a bad coach. It doesn't mean that, he didn't do a great job when he was there in Cleveland. It just means that this group of players who they have under contract now for a long term, with Donovan and Darius and Jarrett and Evan, like all of these guys are there for the long haul. Sometimes you need to make a change, and changing the coach is the thing that makes the most sense. And we're seeing that this year with Cleveland, that just making that adjustment, getting them into a different mode, I think has changed the way that they're playing basketball, and maybe has engaged them in some way, shape, or form that is slightly different in terms of connection to the material that the coach is throwing at them.
Yeah. I mean, I think we always want to pinpoint exactly like, okay, why is Kenny better for these guys than JB was? And sometimes we can't, because this is one thing I've learned, and from being in locker rooms, we don't know as outsiders. We don't know what those conversations were. Like I was just in a media room with JB Bickerstaff, and his presence, I was like, man, this seems like a really good dude. I enjoyed being there. I loved his presence, all of that. I'm not saying JB's bad in the locker room, but I had listen, my JUCO coach and I did not get along. I left JUCO not speaking to him. But I text him every Christmas, hey, coach, love you. Like, hope you're doing well, all of that stuff. Like, we didn't necessarily vibe as a player coach type. And he's a great person. I feel like I'm a good person and was a coachable player. And he was a good coach and won a lot of games. But it's just sometimes it's a very competitive space, Sam, as you know. And when competitive juices I'm a much different person when you put a basketball in my hand than I am sitting here recording a podcast with you. And everybody would be. So maybe there's something about how Kenny goes about his business that clicks with Donovan and Darius. Or the other thing is, maybe it was a wake-up call to Donovan and Darius, like, dang, our coach just got fired. There's all this talk, whatever. Maybe we need to flip this switch just a little bit so we work together better. I don't know. Those are just some thoughts, I guess, and ideas of why this has went the way it has. And Kenny does deserve credit for it, because I do think he's implemented some things that are obviously working very well.
The other thing I'll bring up here, just statistically, looking through the cleaning the glass numbers, is, they're not just beating up on bad teams either. If you look through and say, filter by the top 10 defenses in the league and how opposing teams perform against teams with top 10 defenses, the Cavaliers still have the best offense in the league against teams with top 10 defenses. And they have it by like 1.5 points over the Knicks. They have been elite on the offensive end this season. And I think that does come down to Kenny Atkinson versus JB Bickerstaff. All due respect to JB, who I think he's doing a great job with Detroit, did a great job with the young Cavs team, kind of getting them along. But, even if you look at what the Cavs have done in terms of just wins and losses against top 10 teams so far, they're 5-2 against teams with a top 10 point differential per cleaning the glass. They have a plus 6.4 point differential in terms of points per 100 in those games. There are currently 6 teams right now with a positive point differential against top 10 teams in the league. Can you name those 6 teams, Bryce?
Celtics.
Yep.
Thunder
are number 1. Celtics are number 2.
Grizzlies
are 7th currently, so they are not there. They are losing those games by 3 points.
3
per
points. 100. The Knicks?
The Knicks are in that mix, plus 2.8.
So then I will go. Who is somebody? What about the Mavericks?
The Mavericks are in this group, plus 1.6. They are 6th.
So I've named 4 of the 6. 5 of the. There's one more team?
5 of the 6. There's one more.
Feel like let's go. Definitely not them. I feel like it's somebody like, is it the Lakers or somebody like that? It's not the Lakers. The Rockets. Yeah.
Alex.
So I was trying not to just go with the standings. So
yeah, the Rockets are currently 4th in the league against top 10 teams in terms of point differential. They are a plus 3.1. By the way, there are 1, 2, 3, 4 teams only with a winning record against those teams. The Celtics are only 3-3 in those games. They've just beaten the brakes off of a few teams. But yeah, I am intrigued to see what this means. But it means the Cavs, to me, are very clearly, if you're beating top 10 teams, you have the number 1 offense in the league against top 10 defenses. You have a top 10 defense against top 10 offenses like they do. This says to me like real contender. And I think it's worth talking about the players a little bit as well, just in terms of what we're seeing. I think you mentioned the synergy between Garland and Mitchell already. I think that's 100% like a real factor here. They look great, but Mitchell has always looked great and has looked, fantastic throughout his Cavs tenure. Garland broke his jaw last year, and I think that really fucked with him in a real way. This year, that speed and touch and like balance combo is all back.
Yeah.
Has that nasty little floater once he gets into the lane. willing to drive kind of all the time again. He's averaging 14 drives per game, which I believe is in the top 15 league wide. He's shooting 57% on those drives, but also averaging 6.5 kickouts, so passes per game. Maybe not necessarily kickouts, can be dump offs as well, but 6.5 passes per game off of those drives, which is 5th in the league. He's 3rd in assists per game off of his drives. And the thing about it too is that like he and Mitchell aren't really like dominating the ball. They both only average 4.8 minutes per game on the ball each. That's like right around like 25th to 30th in the league. So like, it's not like Cade or LaMelo or somebody like that, or Jalen Brunson, right? Guys that like just have the ball in their hands all the time. I think that the kind of combination of those two numbers shows to me is that when Garland has the ball, and this shows up on tape, right? Like he's exceptionally aggressive. And he is trying to get downhill, trying to attack, trying to get to the basket, trying to get kickouts, trying to get paint touches. And it's been really, really impactful on their offense. We're going to get to all-stars later. I'll just say I have Darius Garland on my all-star team right now. He has been, to me, just completely outstanding this season. And like, I think there is a very real case that he is driving their offense just as much, if not more so, honestly, than what Donovan Mitchell is. Mitchell gets the toughest matchup every night, and I don't want to discount that. But Darius's ability to pass and play make in his synergy with Jarrett Allen, I kind of think that there's a case, he and Mitchell do it together for sure. It's not a one or the other situation. But if I was assigning credit, like I would say probably like, you know, I don't know what the numbers are, but like 40% to Garland and like 37% to Mitchell right now, or something like that, in terms of like, if I was assigning credit for how I've enjoyed watching their offense and how good their offense has been so far.
That's interesting. And the Cavs were going to be a fun conversation of the all-star thing because of like, how many guys do you put in there? Which of the guys do you put in there? Because I mean, I think Evan Mobley is having an incredible season. And whenever you factor in both sides of the floor, I think he has a real argument, especially if you're only going to put 2 Cavs in, for him to be the second Cav.
Just one defensive player of the month in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah. And so I think it'll be a fun conversation in a very positive way. So hopefully people don't turn it negative in some capacity. I think it's very positive because these guys have been awesome. And obviously, you know, Jarrett Allen deserves a lot of credit as well. I find myself thinking, listen, I'm with you. I don't think the gap is drastic. I guess if you told me to assign 40-37, I would probably go opposite of you. I would probably give it to Donovan Mitchell with Darius.
I don't blame you for that either. Yeah.
But what I did realize watching the most recent game, looking at numbers and stuff like that, is the assist that Darius creates and how much he does that, and how good he is working off of Donovan in these situations. So I have come to appreciate him even more than maybe what I would have coming into the season. And that gap is much closer than what I would have guessed 30 some games into the season.
The other guy that we have to bring up here, I think is just like different, is Evan Mobley. Evan Mobley has been unbelievable this season, averaging 18 points, 9 rebounds, 3 assists per game, shooting 57% from the field, but also 43% from 3. That is obviously just an enormous leap in terms of the 3-point percentage. The 2-point percentage, you know, I think that what people may not have recognized a little bit last season was that he had continued to develop like real chemistry with some of the guards and was finding ways to roll to the rim and create shots that way. But a lot of that stuff came with Jarrett Allen out of the lineup a lot of the time. I think that they've found that blend now of how to make it work with Allen and Mobley. And a lot of it just has to do with Mobley being able to attack closeouts now and be able to make passes and make decisions off of attacking closeouts. Mm-hmm. Look, he still doesn't really get treated as like a real 3-point shooter. Teams will close out short on him all the time. He's hurting opposing teams when they close out short on him. He's making 43% of his threes, but that is what teams will do in the playoffs. And that will ultimately kind of hold the cards for them, how well Mobley is able to play in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, if we were going to say two things that worried us the most, two things that worry me the most about this team coming the playoffs, it would be Garland defensively and the matchups and teams hunting him and him being able to hold up and all of that. And then the second thing would be what you mentioned here with Evan Mobley in terms of how does he make enough shots to make teams respect it? The percentage is good. You've already mentioned the volume, all of that. I will be interested to see if he can knock the shots down when it matters. I also think the release is very slow still for Evan Mobley on catch and shoot, which if I was defending him or scouting him, I would still ask for closeouts, but let my defenders know, like, hey, you can play way off, but then you can get there still and contest it because it takes him a little while to get it off. And so I can still allow them to play off and be very good helpers. So those are probably the two things I point to the most: the Garland defense, Mobley spacing. I do think he can attack closeouts. I like seeing him be aggressive on his drives. And I think big picture, as he continues to fill his body out just a little bit, he's going to be even better on those drives with some added strength. The other thing is kind of like the fifth spot within this rotation and all of that. I love all of these guys, but you get into playoffs and you pick the right guys to keep in the rotation, not be in the rotation. All of that is going to be interesting. And that's where Kenny's really going to earn his money as the head coach, Sam, because he's not playing, I would assume, all of these guys come playoffs. So can he push the right buttons in terms of the Sam Merrills versus the Niangs versus, small versus big versus, Ty Jerome? All of those decisions are going to be really important come playoff time.
Well, and what I like about what they have in those circumstances actually is they kind of have different options for the way that
they do.
Teams play. Like, you can go, if you want more of a playmaking bent, Karis LeVert. If you want to go smaller and play one of Allen or Mobley, you can go Dean Wade at the 4 and have like real offense and defense out there, because Dean can shoot and he's a pretty good defender. If you want to just go like traditional, like 1 through 5, you can go Max Strus, and Strus is, still not quite shooting at the level that, he'll get to through his first 5 games, but Strus is going to shoot it, and he's a pretty good one-on-one defender and does a good job. Sam Merrill, if you want like the elite level shooting, Ty Jerome, if you want the like playmaking and decision making out there that maybe Karis doesn't have, but Karis is able to get to the rim and attack and drive and get downhill, right? So they have a lot of ways to mix and match depending on what you need in any sort of given moment, which I think is really critical for them in the playoffs. Now, they have the Garland Mitchell problem in the playoffs that isn't going to change. Like, they're going to have to play both of those guys. Otherwise, the offense is going to take a dip. Whether or not they're able to handle that will ultimately tell the tale of how far they're able to go in the playoffs. But the fact that they have a lot of different options for both the 4th and 5th guys and within their bench units, I do think is kind of a strength as opposed to a question.
I think it's a strength if the coach handles it correctly. And I'm not like trying to call out Kenny Atkinson. That's not my intention here. I'm just saying that when you have decisions and options, you then are required to make the correct ones, as opposed to a team like, say, like the Celtics, who like, this is who we're going to play, the rotation stuff, the rotation decisions. It just is what it is. There's not a whole, like, are we going to play Jordan? Like, they're not trying to decide if they're going to play Jordan Walsh or not, or something like that. Kenny Atkinson and his staff has to go, okay, we're playing these guys in this series. Who are the other 4 guys we're going to play outside of the big 4? Okay, we won this series. Now we have to go to this guy and say, hey, thanks for what you just did, but you're going to set, hey, Sam Merrill, you didn't play last series, but now we really need your floor spacing and off-ball movement. Now you're going to come in and play after sitting. Obviously, I'm just using it as an example. So I agree with you that it can be a strength. It's only a strength if used correctly.
So here's my next question to you before we get into like what they look like as contenders. Is there really a move out there that you see that you would recommend for them? I'm kind of struggling with that, in all honesty. Like, I might just kind of run with what they have right now, but also if I'm them, like, I feel like, look, like if Boston gets hurt and, if Oklahoma City, doesn't get Chet back and things like that, like, I think I might be in the game here. So the automatic inclination is to try and maximize that potential. But obviously they do have like somewhat limited assets to an extent, right? Like, they have because of the Donovan Mitchell deal. Like they are down picks. Like they don't have a ton of them to be able to move. I believe that they can. I think that they have one that they might be able to move. I think that they might be able to move the 2020 or the 2031 pick, if I remember correctly. Beyond that, like they have 1 million second round picks that they can use. And then they have like guys on their team that are actually good at basketball, which is a big help. We didn't even mention Isaac Okoro in this either. And Okoro is somebody who, it looks like a guy who can really help and, can give them a real defensive presence in certain moments. Is there a player out on the market that you look at and you're like, that's kind of a guy that I would use and go for?
So I laughed about the free Cam Whitmore comment because obviously people know I'm a huge Cam Whitmore fan. So my thing is, Sam, like I saw Cam Johnson, like sure, like Cam Johnson would make a lot of sense to slot into that spot at the 3. But what are they offering Brooklyn that Brooklyn wants? Like, is it is it LeVert because it's expiring and then they can just, but like, I don't think the Cam Johnson trade is just like more cap space for the Nets. I wouldn't think so. I would not agree with that, I guess, is what I should say. I don't know that you're right. There are players on here that are good at basketball, but how many of these guys are interesting to Brooklyn in that? I just think they get outbid, I guess, in a Cam Johnson trade. If they're going to make a move, I think it should be somebody like that, though, right? Like, would you agree? Like, It was kind of like the when we were talking about the Grizzlies for Dorian Finney-Smith, and I was like, I don't love it because it just, it adds another guy to a rotation that already has too many guys. If it's the Cavs, I think it has to be a true like upgrade where you're packaging a couple guys, maybe some seconds, whatever, and it's a real upgrade in your rotation where it's like, this guy is one of our top 6 players, ideally one of our top 5 players.
Yeah, and like the Cam Johnson thing is harder to kind of do than what you would think, if I remember correctly, because I think the Cavs are like quite close to the first apron. If I remember correctly, I don't think they're quite like a first apron team. I think that they are just like very close though. And like just giving up like Strus and Jalen Tyson in a pick like doesn't really work. Like that trade does not work. So you'd be moving multiple players for one guy, which is obviously like a very difficult deal. We've talked about that. Like it's very hard to move like 3 and 4 guys for one guy in the season. It's just way more difficult to do that. I mean, like you could do something like, I think that Niang, Okoro, and Jalen Tyson plus a pick gets you Cam Johnson in terms of, making the money work. But like, does Brooklyn do that? Do you think? Like it would depend on what they think about Jalen Tyson, right?
You said Niang, Okoro, and Tyson?
Yeah, and a pick.
I assume a second round pick, not the 2031.
I'm saying the 2031 because I don't think Brooklyn would move him without the pick.
Yeah, of course. So I think that comes down to Jalen Tyson.
Yeah.
Like for Brooklyn, that comes down to Jalen Tyson. I guess potentially maybe how they feel about Okoro, like if they think Okoro is a real asset for them. I mean, that pick's just so far out for Brooklyn that I like Jalen Tyson for what it's worth. My thing with Brooklyn is like, I would want like a real return for Cam Johnson. Like I'm probably on the other, I don't know where other people are at, but I'm not letting.
Oh no. Like that's how they feel.
Okay.
I can tell you. Like they think like multiple firsts or like the equivalent of multiple firsts. Like if they had Jalen Tyson, I don't know where they had Jalen Tyson on their board last year. I'm just saying like if they had Jalen Tyson as like a top 20 player on their board last year and, they consider him a first round value plus another pick, like something like that is probably doable, but it's a little bit more complicated, I think, than what you would expect maybe.
Yeah. Somebody brought up, like, is it worth more? Like, I just know I'm on Spot Track right now and I can do LeVert and Dean Wade for Cam Johnson and it works. Like, I'm not saying that that's equal value, just money. I know it's not equal value. I'm just saying money wise, putting guys that are making right around 22 to match Cam Johnson's 22.5 is working. So I do think right with that, it seems like it works okay.
The other team that like I look at here, I mean, what is Portland gonna do? Is kind of my question, just in general. I mean, I love the idea of Denny Avdia for Cleveland, but they just gave up 2 firsts to get Denny.
That would be
And
bad
I don't think
process.
they're gonna. Yeah, and like I don't think Portland's gonna take a loss on Denny Avdia.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think that would be awful process to then turn around. To me, that team needs to find like to me, Denny is part of the Shaden Sharp, the Scoot Henderson, the Donovan Clingan group of guys that right now I'm keeping on my roster to figure things out with.
Yeah, I agree. So
somebody brought up Kelly Olynyk. I didn't love the specific name, but the idea of a big kind of registered with me.
Makes sense. Yeah.
So I could see that may be the guy that's not a huge upgrade, but just another big in case you need that third guy, even though you're going to stagger Mobley and Allen, and Mobley Shoney can play the 5. I could get behind that if there's some big out there that you don't give up a ton of assets for.
I mean, the name for me is Larry Nance. Like Larry Nance can play with both Allen and Mobley and could give them like a ton of flexibility. Like that is actually the move I would probably try and do is get somebody like Larry Nance. So like,
I like that.
Get the front court, you know, some flexibility, get them a little bit more depth. Like that is the one place on this team that doesn't have a lot of depth, in my opinion, is the front court right now. So if you can go get like one more big, I feel like that would make a lot of sense. It's just, you know, I don't know what the fuck Atlanta's doing with Larry Nance. It makes very, very little makes sense to me about what Atlanta is doing with Larry Nance, having only played him 15 games so far this year. And like he goes in and out of the lineup for reasons beyond my comprehension.
Yeah. So yeah, that would be that one would be interesting to me. Listen, Okoro for Nance actually works. I know it can't work until for 13 days, but that works. Or you could do combinations of Niang and Tyson and some stuff like that if you needed to also.
Yeah. But here's the final question here. And this is the ultimate question that we asked when we started this is, do you think the Cavs are like real, genuine title contenders with this build and with how they've performed this year?
Okay, so I saw people already kind of like derailing this conversation going, well, they can't beat the Celtics, they can't beat the Thunder. So if we're going under that, then sure. Then every other team can be taken out of the equation because I think Oklahoma City is definitely the team I believe in the most in the West. And I think even with the records the way they are, Boston's the team I believe the most in the East. So sure, that doesn't, to me, that doesn't mean everybody else is out of the equation. Because you said like there are other factors in play, injuries, stuff like that. So I would put, if you want to tier it out, I would put them in my next tier of teams. I think when we're talking true title contenders, I probably still have Boston and OKC in a tier above everybody else. And then Cleveland may even lead my next tier of teams.
Cleveland is number 3 for me right now, behind Oklahoma City and Boston. Whether or not I have them in a different tier than Cleveland or than Oklahoma City and Boston, I probably do, if I'm being honest. Like, I think that those two teams really match up well in the playoffs in terms of flexibility, and they just have fewer holes roster wise because you can go big if you're Oklahoma City and Boston. You can go small if you're Oklahoma City and Boston across all swaths of the court, right? With Cleveland, because you have the 2 bigs and you have the 2 smalls, the flexibility is just a little bit more difficult to make work. There are other teams I'll hear out, but I would have Cleveland at 3 based off of how they've played. I mean, the team I would probably have at 4 is a team that, you know, I might get yelled at for. Like, I would still have Dallas at 4. I think that team's really good. And when Luka was there, they looked like they were a wagon that was going to be a total monster this season. Then some mix of like the Knicks.
I was going to say the Knicks would be like, I like that tier, that next tier being the Cavs, the Knicks, the Thunder, or
Not the
excuse me,
Thunder.
the Mavericks. The West is so hard.
Yeah, like if you're asking me in the playoffs, like who I kind of believe in most, like the Lakers and Denver still probably are in that mix. Memphis, like I just would like to see them stay healthy for an extended period of time before I put them, like they're in that tier for sure. But like, well, I guess where I'm at is I might have Cleveland and Dallas like in a little mini separate tier for me above those other teams like
You wouldn't
Denver
even have
and the
you
Lakers.
wouldn't have the Knicks in that same tier.
Maybe.
Also, I want to dispel something real quick because I've seen it about 30 times in the chat, and this is why I don't normally watch the chat. Just because the Celtics, or excuse me, just because the Cavs lost to the Hawks twice, like the Celtics lost to teams twice. Like they went 3-2 against the Pacers last year. Like stuff happens in the regular season. Like I don't think that should be your outwardly like argument against this team being good. So,
I mean the Pacers, I believe, have they beaten Boston twice this year already? I can't remember. I know they just beat them earlier this week. I know that.
I just went to last year where the Celtics went 2-2 against the Hawks in their title winning season. They went 0-2 against the Nuggets, 3-2. Like it's just, yeah, you don't dominate every team that you play against for whatever reason. So anyway,
yeah. And here's the other thing that is real about like these contender windows. And if you're the number 3 team, why you have to go for it. Like if Chet doesn't come back for Oklahoma City, it changes things for Oklahoma City.
Sure.
If Kristaps gets hurt, and like that's a real factor for Boston, Boston is a fundamentally different team.
Yep.
Without Kristaps than they are with Kristaps. Do I think I would still take them in a series over Cleveland? Probably, but it gets like 50-50 to me, 55-45 probably toward Boston. And I'm taking a flyer on that if I'm Cleveland at the end of the day. So yeah, I am in favor of them going for it for sure. And I think that they are absolutely going to do so. And they have a real shot here. Like that, it's not quite as big as the window is not quite as open as it is for Oklahoma City and Boston, but the window is open here. Like this is a real team.
No, and I mean, there's, as somebody mentioned, in the chat, like, what does Orlando look like when we actually get to see their 2 best players on the court driving offense around a defense that's really good, even whenever they're not on the court? The Knicks team, like, again, like, yes, play a bunch of minutes, but seems like they figured things out a little bit with Mikal Bridges, and Cat is playing incredible, like dominating the boards. You talked about the Mavericks. What is Luka? I know somebody joked about it, and this is ridiculous to like, I have no expectations here. If Kawhi comes back and is anything like Kawhi, that's Clippers
a real factor too.
Is interesting because that team flat out defends hard. Like now, I think it kind of disrupts some things offensively that they'd have to really figure out, but you're taking a team that I think will already be a headache in the playoffs. I don't think they're contenders by any means, but will be a headache. And you add a healthy, again, if healthy, all of that, Kawhi. But there's a lot of these things that are going unanswered right now because we're still in January.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Okay. Transitioning now from Cleveland to who our all-star picks would be.
Okay.
We can start with the Eastern Conference.
Perfect.
I think that there are in the East 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think the starters in the East are very clear.
Okay.
I think is what I would say. I will let you go first. Who were your 5 starters, knowing that you have to have 2 guards and 3 front court players?
Oh, is that what I have to do? Because in the Western Conference, I did not do that because I wanted to have fun. So I'm going to disagree with that ruling. I had Giannis, Tatum, Mitchell, Brunson, Cat.
That is the 5 to me.
Okay.
That is very clearly the 5 who should be the starters in the All-Star game. Just point blank. I don't even know. I don't know what the argument would be otherwise.
I say what is the argument? Because I felt this way also, and felt like I was oversimplifying. Also, I want to be clear. Like we went completely based off like on the court play, right? Like not the
Yeah, no, we're talking on the court play. Like I don't care that LaMelo is first in the fan voting.
Okay, yeah. So I'm saying like we don't care about. Okay, just we're not predicting or anything like that. We're just going our 12 spots based off what we've watched this year with any other factors.
Correct.
Like we're not considered this is the All-Star game, so the most enjoyable players or the most aesthetically pleasing or anything like. Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
This is based on basketball.
Okay.
So Giannis so far is averaging 33, 12, and 6, shooting 61% from the field. Obvious starter. Jason Tatum, 28, 10, 5.5 assists per game, shooting 46, 37, 80. Obvious starter, right? Like we don't need to dig into those two at all. I think people are kind of underrating the season Jalen Brunson's having. I've talked about that kind of at length on the show throughout the year. Jalen Brunson's averaging 25 points per game. He's shooting 48, 40, and 83. But the big difference for him is he's averaging 7.7 assists per game, and he's doing an unbelievable job of orchestrating this offense. I think he has been actually better than Towns this year, even though Towns, continues to get many of the accolades, rightfully so, because Cat has also been unbelievable, averaging 25 points, 14 rebounds, 3 assists, shooting 55, 44, 84. I think Brunson has been a little bit more important just in terms of being able to make all of the pieces on this offense fit as the orchestrator and conductor of the show, while also making plays and passing and doing the right things.
Yeah.
The final guy here is Mitchell. Mitchell is down like right around 25th in the league in scoring right now. He's averaging 24, 5 and 5, shooting 46, 42, 81. Part of that is just because they spread it around in Cleveland. The reason that I gave Mitchell the nod over Garland is that Mitchell is a drastically better defender than Garland. That is a real factor there. I think that they are close offensively. Like I said earlier, I probably would give Garland like a very slight nod based on the importance to what he has done for Cleveland this year. But the defense is just kind of not close. And I think that Mitchell has been quite good defensively for what the role is this season. I would go with Mitchell over Garland as a starter for the East in the All-Star game.
And that's where I watch those games, and I think Mitchell is the best player on that team. And I think we will have a fun conversation because I will just spoil it. I actually ended up with Evan Mobley over Darius Garland, while also having Garland in my group of players who maybe ends up getting 3 Cavs on the All-Star team. So I'll be interested to kind of have that conversation as we get into the back end of the roster.
So yeah, I'll just spoil it. I have 3 Cavs and I have 3 Celtics.
Interesting. Okay. So this will
I have 3 Cavs, 3 Celtics, 2 Knicks. Those are by far, like not even close, the 3 best teams in the East. And to me, given especially that like Orlando's had its stars hurt this year, there's nobody else in that conference that has more than 17 wins right now. If we're ever going to reward the best teams in the East or the best teams, in one conference, this is the year to do it.
So you went Derek White also.
I have Derek White as well. Yeah. So I'll just list it out, right? In the 2 guard spots, I have Darius Garland and Cade Cunningham.
Okay.
Because the way that the All-Star is set up, starters, you have 2 guards, 3 front court. Bench, you have 2 guards, 3 front court, 2 wild cards.
Okay.
So in the 2 guard spots, I have Darius Garland and Cade Cunningham.
Yep.
We've talked at length about Garland on this episode. For people who are watching like the separate video that we do, Garland has been, to me, the orchestrator of the number 1 offense in the NBA this season. He has been slightly more important, in my opinion, very, very slightly offensively more important than Mitchell. He is averaging 20.5 points per game, 6.7 assists per game versus only 2.4 turnovers, shooting 49, 43, 91. There was a point this year where like I wasn't sure he was going to miss a free throw. He is unbelievable. He's been so critical to me throughout the entire course of this season. Next, though, is Cade, and Cade has been a monster and is deserving of his flowers. Cade Cunningham this season is averaging 24 points, 10 assists, 7 rebounds, shooting 45, 37, 80. If you just watch Detroit, the fact that they are even remotely close to 500 at 15 and 18 is a testament to Cade Cunningham.
Yeah.
It is basically entirely his show. This team has won more games this year already than they won the entirety of last season. You can look at the efficiency and complain if you want. He is 5% below league average in terms of true shooting percentage, but he's also averaging 10 assists per game. And this team is pretty competitive and is pretty good. And he's taken the requisite leap on defense to where he is not bad on that end anymore.
He has definitely made growth and improvement on the defensive end, especially on the ball. He still gets a little bit lax off the ball at times. He's been really good. And so I was on a podcast the other day, the Kevin O'Connor, and he asked me like, what was the biggest growth this year? And I said, it's Cade Cunningham. Cade Cunningham is the reason that this team has improved this year. Like he is the number one reason. And yeah, so Rachel brings up a good point. Tim Hardaway Jr., Tobias, Malik Beasley, those guys in their spacing has had a major effect. I just want to point out, Cade still leads this team in everything. Their second best offensive player is still third year inconsistent Jaden Ivey. And Tobias has not been great offensively. Tim Hardaway Jr. has been very inconsistently. The one huge factor has been Malik Beasley, who may be top 5 shooter in the NBA this year and a real argument for 6th man of the year, at least in terms of the conversation. So it's not like Tobias has come in and, averaged 20 and 8 and really gave him a second option. So I've been really impressed with Cade. I know people get, annoyed with it and think it's an agenda and all of that. I think he's been awesome, and he's made improvements on the defensive end, as you mentioned.
The 3 front court players that I have.
So Mobley.
I have Mobley. I have Jaylen Brown.
Okay. Yep.
And I have Franz Wagner here still.
Okay.
So Franz is going to miss, right? Like Franz is just not going to be there at the end of the day. He's going to have to miss this game. That's the reality. Like,
so did you give a replacement then for him?
I did.
Okay.
We'll get to it in a second.
Okay.
Who were your 3 front court players?
They would have. Okay. So I didn't actually do it the same way you did. I just put 12 players because I hate all these stupid rules, but I have Cade and Darius in here, Jalen and Evan. And then I had Franz as like, I have injured by his name. So we're in lockstep so far. I assume the differences will be coming soon.
Yep. My first wild card is Trae Young.
Same.
And I know that Trae Young, like I get it, guys. I know that Trae Young is having arguably his worst shooting season of his career. That is a real thing, and I don't want to discount it. He's shooting 34% from 3. He's averaging 12 assists per game. If you watch that Hawks team, he is everything for them on offense. He is responsible for creating every single thing that they do on that end of the court. Jalen Johnson's been great, don't get me wrong, but like Jalen is more taking advantage of what like Trae and those guys kind of create for him in half court situations. Jalen's great in terms of getting out in transition and creating offense that way, but like anything in the half court, DeAndre Hunter, Jalen Johnson, the bigs, it is all so reliant on the Trae Young gravity that is created and on Trae's ability to defend at a high level. Or not defend, I'm sorry, to create and pass at a high level.
Yeah, listen, like I know people are going, Jalen Johnson was very much on my short list. And if this team,
I have Jalen on my short list as well. I have like a group of 19 guys here, and Jalen is on that 19 player list.
yeah, I had roughly the same amount of people, and he wasn't even at the end of that list. And I'll be honest, I disqualified pretty much anybody that wasn't at least in the play-in game. And so I guess the one thing I did try to do was, I did try to represent as many teams as possible, but I didn't give a whole lot to the teams at the bottom of the rankings. And maybe that's wrong. That's just kind of how I went about it. But why do people, okay, we'll finish
going.
it.
Just
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, my bad. So Jalen was very much part of the conversation for me. And it just was like, because like you said, Trey driving everything offensively, kind of just won it over just by a little bit. So
yeah. My second wild card is Damian Lillard.
I was going to say, why are people freaking out on us right now?
Yeah. My replacement is Derek White for Franz. So yeah, Damian Lillard's been awesome this season since those first 10 games. I think Lillard has been like, I think Lillard's like start to the year was pretty rough, and he's missed, I think 7 or 8 games so far this year, but Lillard's averaging like 25 and 8 right now. If you look at the field goal percentage, it doesn't look high, but because he's getting to the line like at will and drilling 37% of his threes, where he's taking 9 of them per game, he still has a true shooting percentage of 7% above league average. Dame has been fantastic this year. I think that any of these guards from Cade, Lillard, Trey, and Garland, you can kind of put them in any order.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I'm fine with wherever you have them. I don't even know that like I really put the wild cards in order necessarily. I just like kind of have 2 wild cards listed here, and I have Dame and Trey like listed.
Yeah, I mean, I have them listed right next to each other as well. I mean, the only thing I did for my order was like I did a starting 5, and then I just started filling it out. So here would be my question then, is based off putting Derek White in at the end, because I think this is more of a fun question. The one team then in the top 6 of either conference that would not be represented, assuming I know what we'll do with the Western Conference, that those 6 will at least have one dude, is the Miami Heat. Was that a case of, because here's what I literally did and then wanted to have this conversation. I put Tyler Hero, Bam Adebayo, Jimmy Butler, because I don't know which one. Like, I think Tyler Hero's been awesome this year. I know.
Yeah, and I talked about that on post game theory earlier this week.
So like, was it a matter of like not being able to pick between one of the 3? Was it like you were comfortable the Heat not having representation? Like, how did that go in?
So I ended up with Bam as the clear guy for me personally, out of that trio. Okay. So Jimmy has missed 10 games. The other 2, I think, have missed. I don't think they've missed any games. They may have missed 1 each, but they've essentially played all of the games this year. Jimmy's probably been the best player out of the 3 whenever he's been on the court, but I don't think the difference has been so drastic that I had to go Jimmy over those 2. That could change in the time before the all-star teams are selected. Like that, it could just be Jimmy at the end of the day. And Jimmy could very easily jump like a significant number of these guys and end up just being the guy. I went with Bam over Hero for this reason. I think Bam's defense is better than Hero's offense.
Okay.
If you watch Bam on defense, I still think he's the most underrated defensive player in the league. He does not get talked about as a top 3 or 4 defender in the league still. Like if you look at voting, like people will vote Jaren Jackson, they will vote Evan Mobley. Like Bam Adebayo is a better defender than Evan Mobley. He is more switchable. He is a monster. He allows you to play 45 different defensive coverages at once if you want to. Bam is an unbelievable defensive basketball player. I think his defense is better than Hero's offense for as great as Hero has been this year. And he has been so good. If you want to watch the breakdown I just did on Hero, please go watch it. I gave him a lot of flowers. Hero is averaging 24 points per game, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, shooting 48, 41, 85. That's how good I think Bam's defense is. I think Bam's defense is better, like by a somewhat substantial margin, than Hero's offense. On top of it, I think Bam's offense is better than Hero's defense. And I don't think I need to explain that substantially. Hero is not disastrous on defense anymore. Like he's giving real effort, but Bam is like a pretty solid offensive player. And Hero is at best average, at times, a lot of the time below average.
Yeah.
So I didn't really have an issue picking. And to me, like Bam and Derek White like are fine. Honestly, I went Derek White because I want Derek White to get an all-star game.
Yeah.
I think that he is deserving of having made an all-star game at some point in his career, given this run with the Boston Celtics. This has been his, in my opinion, probably his best season there, where he's shooting 45, 40, 88 or 84, averaging 4.6 assists, 4.6 rebounds. He's been his stellar defensive self, particularly. So I do, at the end of the day, just kind of want him to be an all-star. Do I think Bam's a better player? Probably. Honestly, probably. But yeah, I would go. I went White over Bam for like really just like legacy reasons, probably more than anything. And that might be unfair. I'll acknowledge that from them. But honestly, like given that I've gotten rid of Wagner too, I might have to put a forward in. But yeah, I would go with that. And you know, Alex is saying the advanced stats are saying that Bam's defense is not that good this season. Guys, Miami's defense is the only thing holding them up right now. They are top 10 in defensive rating. They're like top 15 in offensive rating too because of Hero, but like they're a really good defense. I don't really care what the advanced numbers say because Miami builds its entire fucking defense around Bam. Like that's the entirety of what they're doing. You can't say that like this team that has a top 10 defense, Bam is not having a great defensive season based off of the numbers when the entire thing that Spo does is build the defense around Bam's switchability and his versatility as a player. So yeah.
I think the one place we had the same starters. I think we'd have a lot of the same, especially consider, just Franz as an injury replacement. I probably would still go Bam over Derek White, and that would be my 12th. As I was looking at Heat players to represent, I think I probably would have went with Bam over those guys. I just kind of wanted to give Hero some love because I think Hero has been awesome this year.
Hero ended up in my top 16.
Yeah. So, and I feel pretty good about that because he was a guy when we did our 24 under 24. I kind of wanted to mention when we did that and has been really good this year. Some other names I had, we mentioned Jalen Johnson. I thought Pascal, just because the Pacers, even though underperforming, they're still 8th in the East right now. Maxey, RJ Barrett, Scotty Barnes, and like I did put LaMelo Ball down because he is averaging 30 a game, even though his team has only won 7 games.
Yeah. Like I think people know I'm not the biggest LaMelo guy.
Sure.
I get it. I get the appeal. He's averaging 30 points per game and is deserving of credit here. I ended up with him like 17th or 18th personally. His defense is so bad that I just can't. I can't rock with it.
No, he would be there for like just looking through the list. He would be around that number for me as well.
Yeah. Like comparing him to Cade, like Cade has taken like real strides on defense. They're basically like pretty efficient, pretty similar in terms of scoring efficiency right now. And LaMelo's averaging 6, I think, points per game more. Cade's averaging 2.5 assists per game more. He's drastically better defensively. This is
also like Cade's team is 15 and 18 and LaMelo's is 7 and 25. And I don't know, like, I guess you could tell me that Detroit has a better roster, but it's not like crazy. I mean, is Cade's second best player that much better than LaMelo's second best player? Is, like, I don't know. So,
I mean, I would argue Brandon Miller is better than anybody else on Detroit right now. Like Brandon Miller is better than Jaden Ivey.
As far as a prospect at the very least. So,
I mean, I would argue he's a better basketball player right now.
Sure.
In all
Yeah.
honesty.
So that's
I think that like Miles Bridges is a better basketball player than a lot of the guys on Detroit, right? You can obviously say injuries, like
Sure.
Charlotte has dealt with a mess of injuries. Here's the other thing though with LaMelo on why I ended up knocking him down. He's missed 10 games. Like he's missed a third of the season so far. It is the real reason why. Like Hero has played all of his games. Maxey, I think, has played like a decent amount more, maybe 4 or 5 more than what LaMelo has. Yeah, he's played 4 or 5 more. And I still didn't have Maxey in this thing either, by the way. Derek White, I believe, has played most of their games. Dame has missed, I think, 6 games or so. Yeah, like to me, the fact that the team is terrible, they're 6-16 with LaMelo, too, by the way. He's missed 10 games. He is the worst defender out of any of the guys that we've talked about so far.
Yeah.
Just in terms of like care, attention to detail, any of it. And I'm like somewhat allergic to the style of play, honestly. Like I just don't really like it. Yeah, I didn't really have an issue not having LaMelo. All due respect to him, like he's having a great season. He's shooting, he's averaging 30 points per game. Like I don't want to disrespect that or discount that. He's averaging 7 assists. It's just, I'm not a LaMelo guy, and I think people, at this point kind of get that.
Mr. Ray says LaMelo plays defense like him out there. Yeah, he plays basketball how I played men's league, where I got a bunch of points but didn't go inside the 3-point line. Rachel, why did you say earlier I think everybody is idiots? That's not true at all. I love everybody in the chat, in the comments. I think we have I don't look at the comments usually because I've said this, like my love language is words of affirmation. And so I take it very personal. I take it very personal whenever I see the comments that like call me an idiot. But watching it tonight, I very much enjoyed it and missed it because I think you guys provide and bring a lot of really good stuff. So I do not think that at all.
Anyway. The Western Conference.
Yeah. Can I give my starting 5 because it's fun?
Yeah.
Shea, Jokic, Victor, Jaren Jackson Jr., Anthony Davis. I think they should roll out that starting lineup.
Fucking rules.
Victor's the guard.
So I followed the rules here.
Okay.
I went Shea, Luka, who might be out for this, by the way. So I do have a replacement here.
Okay.
Kevin Durant, Victor Wembanyama, Nikola Jokic.
Okay.
So we'll kind of dive into those 5 real quick, right? Like I don't know that I need to dive into why Shea, who's averaging 31, 5 and 6 and 2 steals and shooting 53, 35, 88 and has been incredible this season on a 27-5 team. Like no. Like I don't need to break that down. I feel like in detail. Kevin Durant this year has been amazing. Yeah. He's averaging 28 points per game, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, 51, 41, 84. Like the free throw percentage is actually weirdly down this year for some reason. He is doing anything he can. He's doing absolutely anything he can to keep the Phoenix Suns afloat on defense. They are 24th in defense right now. He is pretty good on that end, in all honesty. Yeah, he is, to me, one of the 10 best players, 15, 12 best players in the league, whatever it is right now. Probably 10 best players in the league. Wemby has been incredible. He's the best defensive player in the league, and he's averaging, 26, 10, and 4 with 4 blocks and shooting 48, 36, 88. Wemby's been great. Nikola Jokic, again, not a guy I need to really dive into a lot. 31, 13, and 10, shooting 56, 49, 80. Did you know that Nikola Jokic is currently leading the NBA in 3-point percentage?
Yeah, he's pretty good. Hey, have you ever seen his brother in person?
Jokic?
Jokic's brother is massive. I went up
both
to that.
Of them are.
Yeah. I was like, who is this dude?
Yeah, they're both like 6'5", 6'6". They're big dudes.
Wow.
The one was a cage fighter.
That's what somebody said. Like, I don't know. I just saw him walking down the hallway and I was like, oh my God. Like that.
He's probably like an inch taller than you, I would guess. Like he's like
Yeah,
a big
no,
dude.
he was taller than me for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Like he's a massive dude.
And 150 pounds of muscle stronger.
Yeah. Like he's wild, dude. I went with Luka. Luka again has missed 10 games, but Luka's been unbelievable. He's been incredible when he's been on the court. He's averaging 28, 8 and 8, 46, 35, and 77. People are wondering in the comments why do we care about missing 10 games for LaMelo versus missing 10 games for Luka and KD? Luka and KD are drastically better than LaMelo Ball. I don't think I need to like explain a crazy amount more there. And I think that the difference between, honestly, the one that I really strongly considered was Jaren Jackson or Anthony Davis for KD. And I did very much debate whether or not I should discount that a little bit. And I really thought about it with AD specifically. Like AD has been amazing this season. He's averaging 26, 12, 4 and shooting 53% from the field. He's stepping away and shooting a little bit more. If you want to start AD over that, I'm totally good with it.
Yeah, so I actually didn't have KD in my starting group. Like, I guess I just knocked him a little bit because his team is below 500 right now. And the Memphis Grizzlies are 23-11, and even the Lakers are 18-14. And so I probably would have had those guys. Also, guys, don't yell at us till we get through the whole list of players. We haven't left anybody off yet. We will leave some people off that you're going to be mad at us about, but we haven't done it yet. And then I had Luka as an injured player, so I didn't have him in my 12.
Yeah, so I put Luka in and then named a replacement.
Perfect. Same thing.
Okay. Guards. I still have Steph. Like Steph is, if you watch that team play, they would be absolutely nowhere without him. Yes, he's averaging 22, 5 and 6 this year. And I guess that like you could say that the efficiency on the interior particularly is a little bit down. That's why his true shooting percentage is merely like 5% above league average as opposed to its typical like 10 to 15% above league average. But man, like the reason for that is because they just have nobody else on offense that can like consistently create a shot. All due respect to Andrew Wiggins, Kuminga can, but like it's really hard to have Kuminga on the court defensively. And
he only creates shots
like,
for himself. He only,
doesn't pass it at all. Yeah. The Pod's leap just has not occurred. Buddy Hield has been quite poor, honestly, for like the last 15 games. Yeah. D'Anthony Melton got hurt after 6 games. They just really have nobody else.
Schroeder hasn't been good yet. Like that hasn't worked out great so far.
Yeah. It's just not even close to me.
Yep.
He is clearly an all-star, I think.
I have him on my list. He was towards the bottom of my list though. Like he was in my 12, but he's a little bit further down the list.
My second guard was Kyrie.
Yep, I have Kyrie also.
Kyrie's averaging 24, 5 and 5, shooting 49, 44, 90. Continues to just be an offensive driver, unlike many others in the league. Like I said, I think this Dallas team is probably the 4th best team in the league when totally healthy. He has been awesome. He has been so good this year. Playing off of Luka, playing without Luka, he is so capable of doing whatever Dallas needs for him. And he's gotten better defensively. Like, to me, Kyrie is a no-brainer.
Yeah, I mean, I had him on our all NBA list whenever we did it a couple weeks ago. That may have been a little bit too much, but I just find myself really being impressed with the way he plays. And as you mentioned, I think it's playing off of Luka and then being able to transition that mindset into being the guy when Luka is off the court, along with the defensive impact. Obviously, there's some size limitations with Kyrie. I understand that, but I think he's been awesome.
Yeah. Forwards. Anthony Davis, I've mentioned earlier, very strongly considered him as a starter, went slightly with Kevin Durant. You want to go the other way? I'm totally good with it. Honestly, I kind of went with KD as a starter, probably more for lineup balance than anything. I'm already starting Wemby and Jokic. I thought it made a little bit more sense. Second guy that I think you absolutely unequivocally have to have is Jaren Jackson, who is a guy that you had as a starter. Explain why you had him as a starter.
I just think he's been awesome for that team that is second in the Western Conference right now. And he does it defensively. But what we've seen, and we've talked about this a little bit, is he's taken the offense that he was forced to do last year in a usage that was higher than what he was capable of. It's scaled down now a little bit, and now he's doing it more efficiently. He's averaging, Sam, almost the same amount of points this year as what he did in that season last year, but on almost 2 less attempts per game because his percentage is up 5%. I know the rebounding is always a question. It's up a little bit from last year. I just think this was a little bit, I've found as we go through this is why I enjoy doing these, because all of a sudden I realize like maybe I weighed things a certain way. Like I just really valued the Grizzlies being the number 2 seed in the West. And I think Jaren Jackson Jr. is the most deserving Grizzly, for them. And so that's why he definitely was on my team.
Also has been just like a fantastic player overall. Defensively this season, just won the Defensive Player of the Month award for December. Yeah, just has been absolutely terrific.
Alexandre, there's 4 teams, right? The new All-Star
one of them's the Rising Stars team, though.
Okay.
Or not is it it might, if it's Rising Stars or it's like a G League team, it's something like that. I can't remember what it is, but so each team has 8 players. So we're naming 24 players and we're trying to come up with like starters.
There you
basically.
go. Yeah.
Okay. Third forward for me. Who did you have as your third?
Well, I didn't do it like that. So I guess the 2 guys, like I have Şengün and J-Dub on my list. So it's one of those 2 guys, I guess.
Okay. So I have both of those guys as well. So I
literally just named 12 guys. I didn't adhere to the all-star policy.
Yeah. So I ended up with J-Dub slightly ahead of Şengün.
Okay.
And I have Şengün as my like wild card. Like, I think he would be my second wild card right now.
Got you.
Why J-Dub here? Let's go with to start. He has been one of the best defenders in the league this year. He is a real case as an all defense guy, in my opinion. 21 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, shooting 48, 36, 79. He is a critical part of their offense. He's really their only other creator beyond Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. That is why the shooting for him is down a little bit, in my opinion. He has been absolutely elite as a defensive player. He just kind of does everything for them. And this is a team that desperately deserves, if there's a team in the league that deserves 2 All-Stars, it's Oklahoma City. There's just like no doubt about that. So I ended up with J-Dub as an All-Star.
I felt the same way in terms of, I don't believe I have 2 whenever you consider that Luka. Yeah, I don't have a team with 2 All-Stars when you consider Luka being injured. So I thought Oklahoma City definitely deserved that recognition.
Yep. And then the other guy here is Şengün. He's averaging 19, 11, and 5. 43% from the, or 49% from the field. He's been a little bit more inefficient than what I think we all hope for from a guy who is okay on defense. Like, I don't want to sit here and say he's been a problem on defense at all. Like, their defense has been a big portion of why they've been successful this season, if not like the sole portion that they've been successful this season, because they have the number 2 defense in the league. But he is probably the 4th most important defender of their starters. Like, to me, like, Fred is a better defender than he is. I think that certainly Dylan Brooks is, Amen Thompson is, Jabari is, a better defender than what he is. Tari Eason obviously as well. Eason's been out for a little bit now, though. I do think that his offense, though, is really the only thing that kind of makes their offense workable consistently. Fred has not had a great shooting season. Jalen Green has just had a poor season at the end of the day. There's not another way to put that. I think that a big reason why the efficiency for Şengün is down is because teams really sell out to stop him. And then just close out late to guys like Dylan Brooks, Jalen Green, Fred. Like they don't really care about those guys as much. Yeah, like I think Şengün has been really, really good. Like Şengün has been really, really good this year and is deserving of an all-star berth.
Yeah, I'm with you. Again, this is the 3 seed in the West. They obviously are, to me, needed representation. I looking at the on-offs on B-Ball Reference, just watching the games. I think Şengün, like you said, offensively, the usage he takes, I think he is improved defensively. It'll be interesting. Like, does he start making some of these shots? I think an area where he definitely hasn't been as good, 0 to 3 feet down, but also the 3 to 10 feet, like the little floater game and all of that. So it'll be interesting to see if that starts to uptick as the season goes on. But yeah, I definitely had him on my list.
Yeah. So that was one wild card for me. The other wild card I had was Anthony Edwards.
Same.
Anthony Edwards has been fantastic this season. He is not the reason that this team is a problem. That is a number of factors, from Mike Conley to, the fit of Julius Randle to any other of different things you want to point out. He's averaging 25 points per game, 6 rebounds, 4 assists. I will say, like, I would like the turnover stuff and the decision-making stuff to get cleaned up at some point before I have him ahead of Curry and Kyrie for this thing right now. That's the difference between him and those two for me this season to this point. If you wanted to have Ant ahead of either of those two, I'll understand it. But to me, Ant is the last, like, very clear name here.
Yeah, I have Anthony Edwards here as well. Yeah, I mean, we don't need to do a whole segment on the Wolves, but you mentioned Mike Conley, Jaden McDaniels offensively hasn't grown. Julius, like, the ball just stops. And like, whenever he touches the ball, like, there's just no flow whatsoever. But Ant, the shot making is ridiculous. He's shooting 42% on almost 10 threes a game. Like, while there is some conversations about the free throws and getting downhill, he's still averaging 25. You mentioned the playmaking. I'm interested to see how that looks in the playoffs this year. I'm also interested to see, like, maybe my expectations are too high on the defensive end, but I would like to see some of that continue to grow as well. But to me, he was definitely here. This whole conversation came down to the names we're about to have. And I think this is where people are going to get upset, because I've seen, 2 of the last 4 comments have mentioned 2 of the names. And so I think this last spot is where I had the most difficulty. So I'm interested to see where you go.
Okay, so Ja Morant has missed 14 games, but I still kind of put him on my longer list.
Yep.
Didn't choose him. I
did not.
Norman Powell's been ridiculous.
Yeah.
Been, like, totally ridiculous as a scorer and his efficiency. I've James Harden actually ahead of him, though, because I think that Harden is the guy that, like, really stirs that drink. If you watch them on offense, like, he is the one that has to create an inordinate amount of the offense for them. That's why the efficiency numbers are down. I totally get it. If you think you want to pick Powell ahead of him, I don't have an issue with that. But when I watch that team, I think that Harden's the one that's, like, really making their offense go, as opposed to Powell, who's really finishing plays at a super high level. It came down to me to De'Aaron Fox.
Yep, that's the other name.
Who has been absolutely terrific this season. Do you want to say the other name?
LeBron? Booker?
Yeah. Like, LeBron and Booker are the other.
These were the only names on my list, or the ones we just named. And I have really struggled with the James Harden, Norm Powell thing. I think what I would like to do is give it to a Clipper, because De'Aaron Fox has been incredible. And again, maybe this is where I just, like, weight standing too much, especially in a Western Conference. But I felt like the Clippers being where they're at right now, I wanted to give it to them. I really struggled to decide between those 2 guys, Sam. I with you. I think Harden stirs the drink. But man, if you didn't have Norman Powell running the wing and converting all of this, that drink wouldn't taste as good either. So I'm okay either way with what people would want to go between those 2.
I went with Fox.
I love it. Well, there we go. We don't have to.
I went with Fox.
You go with De'Aaron Fox, so that way you don't have to have the James Harden versus Norm Powell conversation. There we go. That's easy.
I totally get it. I understand why someone would pick Norman Powell. I understand why someone would pick a Clipper and James Harden. Fox is averaging 27, 5, and 6 this year. He's shooting 49% from the field. I think he's been pretty solid on defense. I think he's the guy that drives it way more than what Sabonis does for them. Yeah, to me, it's De'Aaron that's been the guy.
I'm cool with it. Like literally my list, De'Aaron Fox was the next name. And the only reason that I wouldn't have put him over Harden and his pal again is because I felt like a team that is top 6 in the West at 19 and 14, quote unquote, deserved, needed representation, however you want to say it, over what the Kings have been this year. I think it's easy to probably make the argument that Fox has been better than both of those guys. So I understand. I get it. I would have went with one of the Clippers, but in fairness, I don't know which one I would have chosen. So
why no LeBron? 23 points, 7 rebounds, 9 assists. Why no LeBron for you?
I mean, we've talked about it, right? Like the on-off numbers speak for themselves. To me, again, I didn't think another team I wanted to put another, 2 players from another team other than the Thunder. And so, like, obviously I considered him. He was the next name after De'Aaron Fox. So he's right there. But I was just more comfortable with some of these other players and including teams that hadn't yet been represented.
When I've watched the Lakers this year, well, we know that the LeBron defense this year has not been very good. Yeah. Like we can acknowledge that it's been a real factor. It shows up in all of the on-off numbers, right? With him on the court, despite the fact that he shares his minutes with Anthony Davis, like a significant amount of the time. LeBron has played 1,000 minutes this season. He's played 700 of them almost with Anthony Davis. When LeBron is on the court, they give up 118 points per 100 possessions. Actually, no, I'm sorry, 119 points per 100 possessions per play-by-play stats. They're actually better offensively without LeBron on the court too right now. And I can't really wrap my head around that in terms of the all-star category. I think that LeBron is, continued to defy age, averaging 23, 8, and 9 this year, but I just, they have played better without him on the court this year. Now, like, does that mean they're better without LeBron? Absolutely not. But when we're talking about like the top 12, 13 players in the league in the West this year, I went with other players ahead of LeBron.
Yep. I'm with you.
Okay.
I liked my top 12, to be honest. I thought I had an easier time getting to 12 in the West than I did in the East.
Yeah, I think I would agree.
But that's not true. 13 with Fox was hard. So that's not entirely. I had more names from like 10 to 16 in the East, I guess, where that's what made it hard. Where in the West, I kind of just had to make the one decision between the Clippers guys and De'Aaron. Yes,
for the East,
as YouTube user says, we all know LeBron's going to get there, which makes you realize that somebody we just named isn't going to get there on top of the conversations we're already having about one of the Clippers guys not being on it or De'Aaron Fox or something like that.
My guess is it will be Şengün that gets left out.
Sure. Yeah.
If you maybe bet. Like I would guess it would be Şengün that gets left out, but we are naming him. All-star starters for the East: Donovan Mitchell, Jalen Brunson, Jason Tatum, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Karl Anthony Towns. Guards: Cade Cunningham, Trae Young, Darius Garland, Damian Lillard, 2 of those guys as wild cards. Forwards: Franz Wagner, Jaylen Brown, Evan Mobley, and then I have Derek White as an injury replacement for Franz Wagner. If I do need it to be a forward, which it might actually have to be now that I think about it more, I would have Bam as the guy there. In the West: Shea, Luka, Kevin Durant, Victor Wembanyama, Nikola Jokic. My guards would be Kevin Durant or Kyrie Irving and Stephen Curry. My forwards off the bench would be AD, Jaren Jackson, and Jalen Williams. Wild card spots were Anthony Edwards and Alperen Şengün, and then had De'Aaron Fox as my wild card. Bryce, who did you have?
Yeah,
You had the same in the East, I think, right?
A lot. Yeah, I would have had Bam in the East for Franz, and then in the West, I would have gone the Clippers guys over De'Aaron Fox and Alexandre. I understand what you're saying now with the 3 teams and 3 different starters. So yeah, I understand what you were asking now based on what. Yeah, it makes it tougher because it's so intermixed. But yeah, I got what you were asking now. So who wins?
Yeah, like I don't know what to do with that.
Yeah.
Yet. I know that they're drafting, but like I don't know, like in terms of the starters versus reserves, like how they're managing that whole thing.
Yep. Cool.
In the West, who did you have?
All the same people as you, other than, again, I would have went with I didn't have KD starting, and I would have went with either Harden or Powell over De'Aaron Fox. I would have given a Clippers guy a nod.
Yep. Totally fair, I think. Okay, Bryce, it's been 2 hours. I don't think we're going to do trivia today.
Okay.
Probably been a little bit too long. Also, importantly, the last test match between India and Australia started here like 30 minutes ago. So I got to go watch that with my wife. And also, I have to finish writing a mock draft, which is the critical thing today. Putting together a 2025 NBA mock draft right now, not easy. Quite difficult. I don't know who I have where, in all honesty, outside of what I would say is the top group. At some point next week, we are going to do like an NBA draft check-in. So, Bryce, prepare for that in some way, shape, or form.
I've been keeping the big board active and updated and watching games, so I'll be ready. Cricket is life.
That's absolutely true. So yeah, no, I am interested to see what your board will look like. I have a vague sense of what my board looks like. It is very difficult to continue to figure out. So for people who, so Alexander is asking, isn't a mock draft pointless? A big board is better. No. So the difference for me in terms of what I do is the big board is my rankings. The mock draft is more where NBA teams are, because I'm talking to those folks a lot and actually getting like a real sense of where players slot in. Right. And trying to figure out where the people who are going to be selecting are, but I have different opinions than them. And we talk about it all the time, and we get into discussions, not arguments, and try to figure out where we're at on things. But that's the difference between the two, for me at least, in terms of the way that I go about it. Bryce, tell the people where they can find your work. Tell the people what's going on.
Yeah, at Motor City Hoops on Twitter, on Blue Sky. Always shout out the Substack, motorcityhoops.substack.com. I know you probably don't want to read about the Pistons post-game analysis and all of that, but I do make notes on the team that the Pistons have played. So if you were a fan of the team Detroit plays, there are some notes on that you can check out. Wouldn't recommend subscribing, but just go check out the article. The Pistons Pulse podcast, if you do want Pistons content. Otherwise, Game Theory podcast right here with the Sam Vecenie.
Go to The Athletic. Keep me employed over there. We will be back at some point next week, probably on, what will that be? Probably Sunday between the two of us. And then I might do a post-game theory. The thing is that over the next couple of days, so I have upgraded my internet connection in terms of upload speeds in order to try to get the quality on the post-game theory tape a little bit better. The other thing I'm working through is trying to figure out how to use OBS for those instead of using StreamYard for those, which is what Bryce and I use for these, because it's just StreamYard's fantastic if it's like the two of us talking and we're sharing screens and things like that. I'm trying to figure out if maybe OBS will give me a little bit of a higher quality, because I can really mess with the bit rates and things like that on YouTube. So there's a chance there might not be a post-game theory now later this week, if only because I'm kind of working through some of the quality stuff. So just keep that in mind, basically. In terms, if you don't see another post-game theory this week, I promise I'm working through it. Right? we're trying to do what we can here, basically, to get these things as high quality as we can. I've been talking to some people, trying to figure out how to learn to use this stuff. So that's what's going on my end. So keep it locked here. Go subscribe to the YouTube channel, Game Theory Podcast with Sam Vecenie. Go subscribe to all of the many social media platforms that our fearless leader, GMAC, has created over on X, Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads, TikTok. Is TikTok still alive for you, Bryce, in the United States? I don't know.
I've never once downloaded TikTok, so I don't know, but I will let you know when I get back to school, because that's apparently where all of my students get their news from.
That's scary. Okay, keep it locked here. Until next time, we'll talk soon. Bye.